Tēnā koutou te whānau o Auckland Unitarian. Tēnā koutou nā manuhiri. No mai, hara mai. Hara mai ki tēnei whare karakia a te atua. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou, katoa. Let us wake up, not just from the Sunday morning exhaustion, from the wish for a few more drowsy minutes in bed. Let us wake up to this world we live in, to its beauty and wonder, and also to its tragedy and pain. We must wake up to this reality that not all in our world have what we do, however much or little that is. We must wake up to the idea that our wholeness, our lives, are only as complete as the lives of those around us, of those we are inextricably tied to in a great web of mutuality, of which all of us are part. We must stay awake, working every day for racial justice in our country. Let us wake up, let us stay awake. Now come. Let us worship together. May seeing each other's faces this morning give us shelter and break through our loneliness. And may we feel the embrace of a larger spirit of life and love. We light our flaming chalice as a beloved people, united in love and thirsting for restorative justice. May it melt away the tethers that uphold whiteness in our midst. May it spark in us a spirit of humility. May it ignite in us radical love that transforms our energy into purposeful action. This is a chalice of audacious hope. This chalice shines a light on our shared path, signaling our intention to listen deeply, reflect wisely, and move boldly towards our highest ideals. My reading this morning is A Prayer for White People by Quaadgras. Sheltered in our homes or going to work at risk, for week after week after week, we're edgy, tired, a little raw. We are tender, vulnerable, open. A little more open than usual, those of us who are white, who before might have been distracted, who before might have been too busy, who before might have been preoccupied with our lives, are noticing the ways injustice has happened to people of color. The same way, again and again and again. Now we have become aware. Please, may we be aware. May we not lose awareness. May we not get distracted. May we not turn away. May we be open, really open. Accepting the invitation to change, really change our minds, our hearts, our world. When we encounter calls to defund the police, when we encounter calls for reparations, when we hear follow our lead from people of color, may we listen, may we learn, may we be open. even if it means rethinking everything you thought you knew about the world. We have, all of us as humans, an enormous opportunity to change one of the oldest injustices in history, to change everything. May we stay vulnerable. May we stay tender. May we take action. Eyes and hearts and minds open. Some things bear repeating. Most of this musing is from a talk on racism I gave over a year ago. Sadly, it has not passed its use-by date. Because racism is like COVID-19. If it can be cured, it will be a challenge. Scientists are working on it, but they aren't there yet. But they know a few prerequisites. Racism is what Rudyard Kipling coined as the white man's burden. Not just for colonizers, not just for Trump supporters, not just for people who dress up in bed sheets, not just for Americans, but all white people. Even for Unitarians and their predominantly white faith movement with their first three principles, which are the antidote to racism: recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every person, seeking justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, and accepting one another and encouraging spiritual growth in our congregations. If you're white, it was not your choice, but you are still subject to white consciousness, what Unitarian Charles Alexander describes as moderate white supremacy. Moderate white supremacy, he says, is systemic, invasive, and self-perpetuating, continually prioritizing white culture, cultural values and interests above those of marginalized people of color. It permeates and corrupts our practices, systems, and institutions, even corrupting the reforms we institute to bring about equality. As a black man, Alexander points out that it is the white people's burden to cure themselves. The cure begins with understanding the source and dynamics of racism. Racism is layered. At the bottom is internalized racism. Even good white people have race-based beliefs and feelings. These feelings are inculcated in us from birth by the biases in our families, our classmates, and in our white culture, including the pervasive effect of the media. It is important to note that no one is born a racist. To become a racist, we have to be carefully taught. The more racist attitudes are normalized in society, the more they blind white people to their own attitudes and their impact on people of color. The next layer, interpersonal racism, is more blatant. This is bigotry and biases shown between individuals through word and deed. Those who express hatred to people of color give moderate white supremacists cover. We can point our finger at them as bad white people and deny our own racial beliefs and attitudes, which give support to a more insidious form of racism, institutional racism. Institutional racism involves discriminatory policies and practices within organizations and institutions. that give preference to one race over another. Here's one example of institutional racism from our Unitarian history. It's the story of Reverend W.H.G. Carter, a big man with a big personality, light-skinned, 6'2", a man of charm, energy, imagination, and learning. He trained as a minister in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, but never served as a minister in that denomination. He disagreed with many of its beliefs of the AME Church, starting with the divinity of Jesus. As an adult, Reverend Carter worked as a photographer, a mural painter, a teacher, a postal worker, a funhouse operator, and a real estate speculator. Like his maternal grandfather, William H. Gray, a free-born African-American, Carter was a political activist. Reverend Carter in 1918 founded a Unitarian church in Cincinnati called the Church of the Unitarian Brotherhood. It was probably the only African-American Unitarian church in America at that time. He also founded a fraternal order called the Grand Order of Denizens, or God. A denizen is someone who lives in a place. A citizen is someone who has certain rights in that place. The order provided food, money, clothing, and advocacy to poor blacks in Cincinnati. At the time, other Unitarians knew about the church and its founder, but turned their backs because the church was African American and poor. Probably poor was a big deal. 20 years later, a representative of the American Unitarian Association came to investigate, but the conclusion of the official report was, I do not recommend Unitarian fellowship for Mr. Carter or subsidy for his movement. In other words, there was no ministerial degree for Reverend Carter and no money for his church. Shortly afterwards, the Church of the Unitarian Brotherhood closed down. The last layer of racism is systemic racism. The ongoing racial inequalities maintained by society, it puts people of color at a permanent disadvantage in all aspects of life. They are going to lower decile schools, more likely to be incarcerated, have difficulty getting loans, suffer higher unemployment, and when employed, they are in lower paid jobs, live in unhealthier homes, in more dangerous neighborhoods, and have higher infant mortality and lower lifespans. This form of racism, supported by the three other layers, is by far the most destructive and prevalent. In New Zealand, it falls most heavily on Maori and Pacific Islanders. It is maintained by those of us who are white, either by our blindness to it or by the privilege it confers upon us. This includes social justice-oriented Unitarians. I'm going to share a shameful story that has been buried in the annals of New Zealand history. It is the story of eugenics. Eugenics is a belief that the genetic composition of the human race can be improved by selective breeding. It judges certain genetic groups as inferior, while promoting other genetic groups as superior. It is a movement that began in England. Its stated purpose was to protect the purity of the white race. It spread to Europe, America, Canada, and eventually to New Zealand. Sir Truby King, founder of the Plunkett Society and a member of the Dunedin Eugenics Society, was a strong proponent, along with Unitarian Sir Robert Stout, a former Premier and Chief Justice. Eugenics was the founding purpose of the Plunkett Society. King wrote, "The Plunkett Society was founded to improve the caliber of Caucasian New Zealand babies by a strict regimen of scheduled feeding, exposure to sunlight, and cleaning. The destiny of the race is in the hands of its mothers." In a submission to Parliament, prominent New Zealand eugenicists argued, "It has rightly been decided that this should be not only a white man's country, but as completely British as possible. We ought to make every effort to keep the stock sturdy and strong, as well as racially pure." The pioneers were, for the most part, an ideal stock for a new offshoot of the mother country. The Great War revealed that from their loins have sprung some of the finest men the world has ever seen, not only in physical strength, but in character and spirit. It also revealed that an inferior strain had crept in and that New Zealand was already getting its share of weaklings. Surely our aim should be to prevent, as far as possible, the multiplication of the latter type. Overseas, eugenics principles were adopted to terrible ends. The theories took their most horrifying manifestation under Nazi Germany, but even as the full extent of Nazis' racial cleansing programs were being discovered, the idea of ridding the race of the mentally ill or feeble-minded was still doing the rounds in New Zealand. The horrors of the Holocaust essentially marked the end of the eugenics movement in New Zealand, although vestiges of it remain, especially in some Pakeha attitudes toward Maori and Pacific Islanders as inferior races and social policies that put them at a disadvantage. An example is how racism undermines Maori's self-image. Studies have shown that it is not uncommon for Maori to buy into racist stereotypes. In one focus group, a Maori man said, "If they're going to keep writing bad things about us, then we are going to be bad because we feel like we're meant to be bad. Maori are meant to be in jail anyway," he said. Statements like this break my heart and motivate me to unburden myself of racial attitudes that cripple a Maori or Pacifica child's chances to have the same chances in life my white race has given me. If we are to find a cure for racism, it is going to have to begin with examining our internalized racism. We need to understand that our internalized racism is a spiritual crime against ourselves that burdens and binds us. Racism is a choice, and empathy and honest self-awareness go a long way towards curing it. The more we put ourselves in the other person's shoes, scientific studies show, the less racist we become. Please join me in the words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. The Invisibility of Whiteness by John A. Powell. The invisibility of whiteness means that one doesn't have to notice that one is white. So there are people, and then there are black people. There are people, and there are Latino people. And people, just folks, turn out to be white. But we don't notice it. White people have the luxury of not having to think about race. That is a benefit of being white, of being part of the dominant group. Just like men don't have to think about gender. The system works for you, and you don't have to think about it. So they live in white space, and then they don't have to think about it. First of all, they think about race as something that belongs to somebody else. The blacks have race, maybe Latinos have race, maybe Asians have race, but they're just white. They're just people. That's part of being white.